Welcome to this presentation from whenever you are in the world. This presentation is meant to be a conversation about inclusion, about internationalization, and how can we make online programs in higher education more inclusive and promoting diversity as well. Obviously, because this session is being recorded, this is going to be an asynchronous conversation, and we will use the technology for that. So this is what I'm going to cover in this session. First, I propose you to take part in a hands-on activity in which we will look at what inclusion and internationalization means to you. It is a hands-on activity because I am going to give you a physical task to do wherever you are watching me, in your home, in your office, at the conference venue. This session was created for the All Winter Conference 2023. You might have been watching this from a different context. We are going to look at the concept of accessibility, inclusion, and internationalization, and whether accessibility is the same as inclusion. I'm going to discuss good practices and recommendations to write learning materials for international audiences and in an online medium. And this is very important because it's not the same writing for the web that writing a PDF document, for example, for a face-to-face instruction. We are going to look at how to design online interactions and learning activities for international audiences, and also explore what inclusive language means in the context of different cultures, how to use inclusive language, but using common sense as well and making everybody feel comfortable with that. At the end, we are going to share resources to support internationalization and inclusion in online programs in higher education, and we conclude with some take-home messages. Let's start the hands-on activity, the practical activity. I want you to think what inclusion and internationalization means to you. What you is to build, to make, to construct an object, an artifact, anything physical, a visual representation of what inclusion means to you, and an object of visual representation of what internationalization means to you. You can use two objects or two visual representations for each concept. You can use the same object for both concepts, or you can use more than two visual representations to illustrate or to visualize the concept of inclusion and internationalization. Is entirely up to you. How are you going to build those objects? You can use any material, any resource, any daily object that are available to you wherever you are, at home, in your office, watching the online conference, wherever you are. And I will give you some examples of what you can use. Don't panic. Why I am asking you to do so? Because I would like you to share your artifacts, whatever you have built, as well as your thoughts and reflection of why that artifact represent inclusion and represent internationalization for you. I would like you to share what you have built in Padlet, and I will give you the link because I would like to have an asynchronous conversation with you about what inclusion and internationalization means to you in the context of online education and in the context of higher education. So this is the task, the how and the why. As I promised, and so that you don't panic, I offer you some ideas of what materials, what you can use wherever you are. You can use Play-Doh. You can use if you have Lego blocks or if you have any toys. This is the Mediterranean kit. If you like Mediterranean food, you probably have any of these. You can use chickpeas, lentils, macaroni, marzipan. You can also use drinking straws, chewing buttons, toothpicks, paper, color pens, you can just draw the object. If you want, you can use papers, paper clicks, blue tab, coffee cups, glasses, plate, any kitchenwares that you can think. And you can also use actual objects, physical objects that you have in your house or in your office. And to give you some ideas, I'm going to share with you the two objects, the two artifacts that I have already built using what it was available for me. I built those objects to illustrate the concept of internationalization and the concept of inclusion. I have recorded a video, and in the video I also express my thoughts on why those objects represent inclusion and internationalization for me, but you don't have to record a video. It's okay if you just take a picture and share this picture with us. To represent what inclusion means to me, I have chosen sea salt and hot water. What happens when we put hot water in sea salt? That the salt dissolves completely, becomes one with the water. Why I have chosen those objects and why I am showing you the process. If you are familiar with Eastern spiritual traditions, if you know the Upanishads, in particular the Chandogya Upanishad, and I am pronouncing this with the Spanish pronunciation, this Upanishad uses the image or the metaphor of the salt that dissolves into hot water to illustrate the concept of the self and how the self permeates everything. And for me, inclusion in online programs and in higher education does not mean something that you have to force, something you have to impose, and that not means that everybody has to be the same, like with this global concept or this whole globalism. That's what I don't like, the use of global programs and the word global. For me, inclusion means keeping our differences and acknowledging our differences, because in our essence, we are all the same and we need each other to become whole, to become one. It's like the salt, which is different than the water, but they need each other and they complement each other. That is why I have chosen those objects, and that is why I am showing you the process. These are the objects that I have chosen to represent my understanding of internationalization, what internationalization in online programs in higher education means to me. I have chosen 3 objects. Olive oil, that represents the culture I originally come from, the Mediterranean culture. I have chosen a Scottish drinking bowl called quaich, and I apologize for my pronunciation of quaich. The quaich represents the culture of the country where I have lived and where I have worked in the last 13 years. And I have chosen milk. Originally, the milk was not an object I planned to choose, but I thought obviously Scotland is part of the United Kingdom, and the milk, and you have the Union flag, represent the United Kingdom. And why I have chosen these 3 objects. I have chosen these 3 objects because with them you can make a really delicious and healthy dessert. This is a recipe I learned from YouTube, but please, if you want the recipe, contact me. Do not follow what I am showing in the video, because this is to illustrate the concept of internationalization, and the recipe is slightly different. But the reason why I have chosen these 3 objects is because keeping the local, keeping what is local and unique to each of the cultures in which I have lived, you can make something bigger and something better. You can integrate the local in order to produce a synergy. And for me, internationalization means integration and means synergy without having to renounce to the regional, the local, what is your essence, where you come from. That's what I have chosen. Olive oil, which is the culture I originally came from, the quaich, representing the good things I have taken from Scotland, and the milk that represents the values and good things that I have taken from the United Kingdom, and that is internationalization in higher education, integrating the different aspects and the different cultural values, different ways of viewing the world from our learners, from our community of learners, in order to enhance the learning experience. I would like you to try the hands-on activity right now while you are watching to this presentation. Obviously, if it is possible. If not, you can try the hands-on activity later. I am going to repeat again what I am asking you to do. Using whatever resources, whatever material you have available wherever you are, at home, in your office, etc., just build a visual representation, an artifact, an object of what inclusion means to you, and a visual representation of what internationalization means to you, both in the context of online international programs and in the context of higher education. You can build one object, two objects, more than three objects, however you prefer. Take a picture of the visual representation of the object that you have built and post the object together with your reflection and thoughts of why the object represents your understanding or your interpretation of inclusion and internationalization. Post your thoughts to the Padlet whose link I am providing in this slide. I attach the tiny URL and the QR code. Take some time to read and comment on other participant posts, and I am giving you 10 minutes for this activity. That means that you will see this slide for 10 minutes. Obviously, you can minimize the screen in which you are watching the presentation. You can try the activity as you are listening to music or no music, however you prefer. So I have given you 10 minutes, hopefully enough time so that you can have built a visual representation, an object, whatever materials are available to you. And hopefully you have also commented on other people's posts in the Padlet. Now we are going to explore the concept of inclusion, internationalization, and accessibility. According to JICS, being inclusive is giving equal access and opportunities to everyone whenever possible. JICS is the UK expert body in digital education and in enhancement, research and innovation in education in a higher education environment. Inclusiveness is defined according to the Equality, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Toolkit project, which is co-founded by the European Union, as the ability of a community to include all its members and avoid excluding any of them. Inclusiveness is the practice of inclusivity. It means creating a learning experience that is mindful to a broad range of learners and that proactively, and I highlight this proactively, includes those learners who might be otherwise excluded or marginalized. This is a well-known definition of internationalization by Jane Knight. This is also the definition of internationalization that appeared in the guidelines documents by the European Commission and the European Parliament. Internationalization is the process of integration of international, intercultural and global dimensions into a purpose in order to enhance the quality of the education and the research for all students and the staff, and in order to make a meaningful contribution to society. Are accessibility and inclusion the same? They are not quite the same, but they are closely interrelated. Accessibility puts the emphasis on removing the barrier that certain group of students might experience while taking part in the learning experience. As a result of removing those barriers, all students benefit from that. Inclusion puts the emphasis on representation, ensuring that the learning experience is mindful and representative to all groups of students, and that the learning experience helps all groups of students to develop their full potential. Both accessible and inclusive design applies to learning materials and online content, teaching and learning activities, and the online interactions that takes place during those learning activities, and assessment and feedback. In this presentation, because of the time limits, we are covering inclusive design for learning materials and for learning activities, but we cannot cover in full detail assessment and feedback. Let's explore now the first aspect of inclusive learning design, which is how to write learning materials for an international audience. When writing learning materials for international audiences for distance learning students located all around the world, the general advice, and also common sense, is to avoid presenting a UK, European or Western-centric view of the world. Always wait and put the same emphasis in all the different cultures and the different cultural influence and values of systems around the world. For English and also for any other languages in which you deliver the online international program, always avoid referring to native or non-native speakers of the language in which the course is being delivered. This does not provide any other value or any help. Do not define a country or cultural heritage using a particular ethnic group. The best example of that is, for example, the expression Anglo-Saxon world. Instead, we should be using the expression English-speaking world. Be specific about geographic locations and try not to use expressions such as this country, overseas, abroad, the continent. Remember that your diverse audience, your international audience, will be located all around the world. So the expressions such as these countries overseas might have a different meaning for them. Ensure that you have updated names for all the countries and regions in the world if this is relevant to the learning materials, and always list part of the world and country in an objective way without giving more importance or more weight to one country or a culture over the other. The best way, for example, is to list countries or regions of the world in alphabetical order. Avoid using derogatory expressions to refer to other countries, cultures, or national idiosyncrasies. Avoid also colloquialism, slang, and idiomatic phrases, and not all your international students might be familiar with those. Avoid culturally specific humor or puns. Do not assume knowledge of regional or religious holidays, customs, cultural practices, local celebrities, regional sports. This is especially important for ice-breaking activities or the activities during the Welcome Week. If appropriate for the subject, use examples from all across the world. Avoid associating the weather with the seasons. We might have students from the Northern Hemisphere and we might have students that are located in the Southern Hemisphere. So instead of, say, in summer to refer to the warmer months and in winter to refer to the colder months, use the expression warmer months or colder months or the names of the months. Writing for an international audience and in an online medium, with the emphasis in the expression in an online medium. This is an aspect in which inclusive design is closely interlinked with accessibility, because it's not the same to write a PDF document to hand out to our students that writing for a web platform, writing for a virtual learning environment or learning management system. So let's see the best advice and recommendations to write for an international audience in an online medium. Do not overtext your students. Use different formats, in particular your multimedia content, to present your learning materials. This will help not only international students, but all your students, and this is also linked to accessibility. When delivering and when creating an online course, you can break the content into small self-contained units, and it's a good practice to include a summary or to list the key points at the end of each unit. Design learning activities that promote online interaction. This is a good principle in terms of learning design. Just do not use your online course as a repository of PDF documents, for example. Use a simple syntax, use independent sentences, and separate the sentences by punctuation marks, and if possible, use present tense and active voice. This is because international students might not be, some of them might use languages in which they don't use passive voice or impersonal passive voice. So it's better to use an active voice in the sentences. In an online medium, less is more. This affirmation is part of the good principles of any learning design methodology. In this slide, I am providing you some guidance and some advice that you might be already know if you are familiar with the most common learning design methodologies. This advice can also be applied to writing for international students in an online medium. I think already mentioned before about do not overuse text, include multimedia content, include formative questions in your courses and set those formative questions in regular intervals as part of your course, include opportunities so that the students can interact online with their peers and tutors, and opportunities in which students can reflect about their learning. How to design online interactions that are representative for an online international audience. How to design learning activities that are representative and relevant to all our distance learning students. It is important to establish an etiquette for the online interactions. This etiquette should comprise the tone and the style of both the verbal and written communications. Also establish how the turns to talk will take place for the synchronous activities. Use data, statistics, trends that are representative for the whole class. Speak slowly and speak clearly. If you are using multimedia materials, always use captions. If you are showing or explaining complex mathematical processes or you use formulas, always include that in written. Always write it down and check that your students are following your explanation. Check for meaning in the synchronous activities and ensure that students are understanding you and they are following you. And as I mentioned before, include reflective questions, checking points in the online units of the course. Include also summaries and key points and self-assessment activities so that the students can check their own knowledge and students can take control and ownership of their own learning. And we have reached the last part of my presentation, in which I want to share with you some thoughts about inclusive language, multiculturalism, and using the common sense. First, I would like to mention that gender theory or gender ideology, according to some, might be something that not all our international students are familiar with. Likewise, the use of pronouns and inclusive language might not be something that in their own cultures, in their own backgrounds, on their own countries is being used. That is why I think it's important to use the common sense when delivering an online international program and discuss the style, tone, and preferences with our students as part of this online etiquette. As a good recommendation, the United Nations has the guidelines for gender exclusive language, and I would like to highlight these 3 key points from those guidelines. Always use a non-discriminatory language, make gender visible only when it's relevant to the communication, never assume somebody's gender, and do not make gender visible when it's not relevant to the communication. Regarding the use of pronouns, it's interesting because this is something that has come from Western European universities, from the English-speaking world. This might not be common or might not be accepted by other cultures. As a matter of fact, in the references, if you speak Spanish, I include a very interesting link from Zuniaga about the use of pronouns in Latin American cultures and other cultures, and whether pronouns are or not another form of cultural colonialism. I would say anyone who wants to use the pronouns and refer to their pronouns is fine. Others who don't want to use pronouns is perfectly fine as well. And also with regard to the use of people first or identity first language, that again depends on somebody's personal preferences, and both languages are equally fine and affected for different contexts. To conclude this presentation, I have uploaded several resources and links to support internationalization and inclusion. Feel free to open the link provided and to upload your own resources. And we have reached the end of my presentation. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the hands-on activity. Please feel free to post your thoughts, your comments on internationalization and inclusion in the Padlet provided. Feel free to add any resources to support inclusion and internationalization in the link that I have provided. Final take-home messages. Consider inclusion and internationalization in online education, in higher education, as a way of acknowledging and celebrating our differences, that we are not the same and that we need that difference to become a whole and to enhance the learning and teaching experience. Use inclusive language when common sense. Let students to decide if they want to use "these are my pronouns" or not. Use the United Nations guidance on inclusive language as a general recommendation. And thank you very much for watching my presentation.